everyone, this is Sunette and welcome back to Meaning Making. Now today we're going to be talking about the types of trauma that we have, because sometimes people got traumatized and they don't even realize how serious it is and that it actually was trauma and not just something not so nice that happened to them. So the first one is primary trauma. Primary trauma means it happened to you. It didn't happen to your spouse or your child or your best friend or someone around you or someone you don't even know for that matter. It happened to you yourself. You got traumatized through something that happened to you. Then there's secondary trauma. Now secondary trauma is being exposed to other people's trauma a lot and that affects you. So this could be like people in caring professions, maybe counselors, doctors, nurses, that kind of thing, and they are constantly exposed to other people's trauma. And over the long run, after years and years of being exposed to so much of people just going through horrible things, they may end up having compassion fatigue, which basically means they numb their emotions so much that they are just kind of zombie-like going through the motions. They no longer have the capacity to just be so nice and have a good, really compassionate bedside manner and be kind and be empathetic. They just don't have that capacity anymore. So you might think, wow, this doctor's bedside manner is horrible. But actually, they've just been exposed to so much trauma in their lives that they just have compassion fatigue. They cannot feel all the emotions that goes with all the many traumas they've been exposed to. The third one is betrayal trauma. Now this is the one where people often don't even realize they were traumatized. They realize something bad happened and it's not fun and we need to deal with it. But they don't realize that this is actually a trauma and there could actually be flashbacks, bad dreams, triggers, all kinds of things, just like with any other trauma. Now betrayal trauma is about being betrayed by a person or more people that is absolutely so close to you that they know almost everything about you, or that you are dependent on for survival. So this could mean a child who is not taken care of well by its parents, maybe abandoned or abused or just not given any attention or love. Or it could be a husband cheating on a wife or a wife cheating on a husband. That betrayal of someone that is so close to you that they know absolutely everything about you and they're your best friend, your closest person. They are the person you go to when things are bad or good, or they're the first person you want to call when something happens in your life and you are betrayed by them. And this literally creates a trauma brain. Then there are three kinds of trauma just in terms of how often they happen. So the first one is acute trauma. Now acute trauma just happens once. It's a traumatic event that happened once, like a car accident. Then we have chronic trauma. Now chronic trauma is the same situation kind of happening over and over again. So this could be a wife that's beaten over and over again by her husband and being threatened or emotionally abused, or a child being abused or whatever, and it's a long-term situation. They've been abused over 3, 4, 5, 10 years and it's a chronic thing. And the last one is called complex trauma. Now complex trauma is totally separate events that have traumatic events that happened throughout this person's life. And it's like you don't even really have time to work through the first trauma and then the second one happens. And so they kind of start building on each other. It's totally unrelated traumas, but they start building on each other because you don't have time to just heal. And then the next thing happens. One of the people I know had, I think, 4 losses in his family over a period of 2 years. So that could be complex trauma. Really just not even mourning the first person's death, then the next person just dies and it's a shock and it's traumatic all over again. Then something needs to be said extra about childhood trauma, because childhood trauma, we need to keep in mind that a child's brain is not fully developed yet. Your prefrontal cortex only fully develops at the age of 25. That's when it matures. So a lot of the things that happens to you as a child forms your brain in a certain way. There's neuroplasticity involved. Your brain physically can change and adapt to what's happening around you. And when that happens when you're a child, you start forming unhealthy ways of thinking and living and coping, and you take that into adulthood with you, and it doesn't work out there in the world. So I often see people coming into my counseling room who are adults with anxiety and depression and I'm not good enough and all kinds of things because of what happened to them when they were children. And the nice thing about that is now their brains have matured. They're not children anymore, so they are able to discuss this situation as adults and think through it as an adult, which a child cannot do. So it's actually an easier way to do that counseling because they can think like an adult now. So these are the main types of trauma that you can go through. Stay tuned because we're going to be talking more about what we can do about the trauma and well, how we can get healthy after a traumatic event or complex trauma.